Okay, it's 9:04 and we will start our last weekly wayside cleanup office hours. The big news, of course, is next week the state of emergency ends and we just all go back to normal, as if nothing ever happened. For us, going back to normal does mean incorporating into our day-to-day lives remote working and remote meetings. So regardless of the COVID situation and any other upcoming infectious diseases, we're going to try to work in, office hours remotely and kind of expand the use of Teams and Zoom and all of that, because if nothing else, this experience kind of led us to the understanding that it expands the opportunity for public involvement and people getting being included in the discussions and makes life a lot easier for everybody. So we'll keep trying it. Of course, Wayside Cleanup knew that. We have been streaming our advisory committee meetings for many years. So I'm hoping that the best thing that comes out of this is I get new toys to play with to make it easier to do that.
To live in your basement. Yes.
From my basement. Oh, I have a lot of toys in the basement at the moment.
But how about your air bureau? Isn't your air bureau, I mean, didn't air improve significantly during COVID? Isn't there concern about putting everybody back in their cars and making them sit on the Southeast Expressway for an hour every morning running their engine?
Yeah, I haven't seen the data. I've certainly heard anecdotal stories and seen incomplete data. At this time last year when everybody was really locked down, I think there was a huge drop in air pollutants. Just the car emissions would do that a lot. But if you've been on the road lately, going into Boston as I do once a week, the traffic is getting back to normal. So I'm not sure it was a long, how permanent an impact it had, but hopefully, at least at the state government level, I mean, we are actively looking at encouraging staff to work remotely. The planning for the Boston office is, as I talked about last week a little bit, I think, that we're losing the One Winter Street space and we will be moving either to the Salt and Sol or the transportation building, details to come. And that the planning is that there will be seats on any given day for only 50% of the staff. So we are looking to reduce our carbon footprint, at least on the commute side, by 50% on any given day or more. I guess it's nothing requiring that we fill up those 50% of chairs. And we have no idea how all of this is going to work. And at least the Boston staff are going to be continuing kind of pretty much more or less doing what we've been doing at least through November, because this and probably through next April, because there's construction that has to be done at the new locations to make sure that it works for this new model. So yes, Matt, I think there's certainly an opportunity for some permanent changes that will hopefully improve air quality. And I'm assuming that people are working on gathering the data and putting it together in reports that will support that sort of thing. So more to come, I assume, on that, on the effect COVID has had on our air quality. Of course, that does mean that everybody's houses, we've been running the heat and air conditioning at a much higher level because we've been sitting at home. So there is compensating effects that you have to take into account. Having said that, I was in the office on Tuesday, which was one of the hot days, and I can attest that they are not running the air conditioning nearly as much in our office building. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it certainly was not as well air conditioned as it would have been if we had a couple hundred people there. So they're not going to turn it on just for me on the third floor. We have established a bit of a routine, of course, on what we talk about here. Let me minimize some of the things on my screen before I show it to you. Where do we want to go with this? Get rid of Teams, get rid of Teams. Oops. Oh, well, we'll start with this. Okay, so we have our usual Pfast update, and you're all very excited about this because who wouldn't be? So our regular Pfast update is now discontinued. Bah! We're not doing this anymore. And it's not just because we're not doing office hours weekly anymore. So we're discontinuing the private well sampling update. We're discontinuing the public water supply sampling update. And I will point out, which I did last week, the somewhat new news is that the Department of Public Health has bottled water information about PFAS available. But the new news is that DEP now has a story map for the private well sampling program. So all of those weekly updates are being discontinued, partly because it's now available whenever you want to look at it online at DEP. So we will click on that. And you'll tell me if it brings it up, which I'm not even seeing it.
Not yet.
Okay, well, we'll start. When I do that, do you see now my browser, Google? Or are you still looking?
No, still looking at the screen.
Okay, so I'm going to have
there we go. Something's happening.
Stop sharing. I'm going to switch over. I'm going to bring it up. Then I'll share again. Okay, so if you click that link, and there will be links all over the place. In fact, it's on the website. But truth to tell, I had a hard time finding it. So we'll try to make it as obvious. I was looking for it in the same place that we would look for the public water supply testing results, that story map, which we'll go to in a second. But this is in the private well drinking water supply FAQ. And buried in the FAQ are PFAS testing in private wells. You can scroll down or go there. And we have the story map, which is the technical term, I guess, for these GIS-based boxes that appear on our website. And hopefully you can see it's big enough, but there's a map here of Massachusetts. The green and blue towns are the ones that are the focus of the private well sampling program because they have a substantial portion of the drinking water supplied by private wells. And the green ones, I think, are the ones that are sampling has started, and the blue ones are eligible, but they are on the list for DEP attention, and we'll be getting to those. So if you
what makes the town eligible again?
They are so
Here it is.
well, yeah, interesting. It's talking about it in the opposite. Towns are ineligible if a small portion of the water supply is coming, and by small portion, it's 40%. So it's eligible if 60% of the drinking water is from private wells. If you fall below that 60% level, then it's ineligible. So it's really a question of all the towns are having some kind of sampling being done. But the towns where there's a lot of public water supplies, including the transient and non-transient, non-community wells, the public water supplies that look like private wells, if those towns are being sampled through the public water supply program, and it was recognized that, well, if there aren't a lot of public water supplies in a town, then you don't know what's happening out there. And that's where the private well sampling comes in, filling in those data gaps. And I think there are 6 towns that have absolutely no public water supplies, not even the small ones, where 100% of the water comes from private wells. So that's the green and the blue are the ones we're focusing on. The greens have started, the blues have not. There are a list of towns over here, and you have the option of either clicking on a town, and anybody want to suggest one? Not that I can tell which town is which, so I'm going to pick one at
Go for
random.
Rehoboth.
I'm going to,
Rehoboth in southeastern Mass, down by Seacoast.
okay, Rehoboth. Which one is Rehoboth? This one?
Nope, three to the left, closest to Rhode Island.
The big rectangular one.
There you go.
Okay, Rehoboth, you're right. Well sampled 44 results received over the MCL1 so far. And new applications are welcome. And it says for all available results, see results tab or click here. So we'll click here and it will bring you to a table which will have all of the results. And let's see if I can make this bigger. So you can see that. That's also on that, the story map, there's a tab that will show you this. There we go. So we're going to scroll up so we can see the headings, which moves us away from Rehoboth, but you'll see the town. Each number is a different different location. We do confirmatory sampling if if the initial results are greater than 10. So you'll see that. And if we know going into it that there is a treatment system on the private well, we will ask the homeowner to sample before the treatment system and after the treatment system. So here you see in Beckett, was that Beckett? Yeah, Beckett. Number one had a treatment system before and after it was non-detect. Let's get something more interesting. Boxford, they had a treatment system and it was pretty much the same before and after the treatment system. Now, keep in mind, these treatment systems are not necessarily treatment systems, and in most of the cases aren't treatment systems for PFAS or contamination as much as for hardness and taste and odor and things like that. So at this point, the nature of the treatment system is really unknown.
What do you think is going on in Boxford 13 there?
Boxford 13. Well, I mean, there are a number of things, and one is that you may in fact get PFAS from some of the components of the treatment system. If they have Teflon fixtures in it, there are theories that you'll see some low levels of PFAS associated with those. Hopefully low levels, so that could be one of it. And I don't know, it was Boxford 13, so 4.62, so we didn't do any confirmatory sampling there. We do have some Carlisle 4 before and after treatment. There will be confirmatory sampling done for those. Freetown, no treatment here. They were resampled, seeing roughly the same. So it's interesting. This information will be updated once a month, I believe.
Newbury.
Newbury has some. Yep.
Oh, went up.
Yeah. Well, there's variability. If you think that there is a big difference between 33 and 29.6, well.
The same difference as 17 and 22, but we respond differently.
Yeah, well, you have to draw the line somewhere.
Yeah.
So this will get more and more interesting as we get more and more data. So we have that. We can go back to
Just to follow up on the comments, do we have a sense of precision of 17 and 22 and 29 and 33? Is there a variability that should be expected due to how low these numbers are, parts per trillion, before you get excited and start saying, there's a trend, where it's really just noise with all the variables?
Well, I think you have to look at PFAS like you would at like you would any other chemical. You look at the lab methodologies, the analytical methodologies, the acceptance criteria. You'd look at, for any given, sampling round, the percent recoveries and all the QA/QC that goes along with that. So it's not just the kind of environmental variability that you might see. Particularly in confirmatory sampling, depending upon the time that's passed, and higher and lower water tables, pumping rates. There's also the laboratory variability that you might encounter. And that's no different from any other contaminant, and that's why for all of these, when the lab results come in, they come into DEP and our contractors at UMass, and the first step is to do a QA/QC review of the data to make sure that we have the confidence in what we're seeing for that. And it's only after that that the data gets released to the homeowners. So that's, and I would impress that upon everybody, that it's important to know and feel comfortable with the quality of the data that you're getting. And with a lot of the stuff that we work with, I mean, it's not surprising to see a little variability due to all the kind of summation of all of those factors that might affect it. And why we try not to make huge decisions based upon one sample, but to put it all in some kind of context. But it is fair, getting an initial sample above 20, we would let the homeowner know that, we want to resample because of a number of reasons. We want to confirm this result. Don't panic yet, but we would certainly, and I wouldn't say that, for those who sat in on the risk communication training yesterday, notice nobody used the term "don't panic yet," but that's probably not a good way of expressing it. But we recommend drinking bottled water while confirmatory samples are taken, while we figure out what's going on, and then see where it goes from there. With public water supplies, typically there is resampling, and for most contaminants, as you don't exceed a standard until the average of 4 quarterly samples are taken. So you take into account some of this variability. PFAS, of course, is a little bit different from everything. So are you seeing the public water supply story map now?
I see.
Do you see
Quabbin Reservoir.
Yeah.
Okay, the Quabbin. Okay, so this is the similar thing for the public water supply, which is on the main PFAS page, which is where I was looking for the private one and didn't find it. And we have the testing results here as well, including a list of the towns that have PFAS above 20, the hits. Here, the green and blue mean something different. The greens are community water systems. The blues are the non-transient, non-community systems. And there's also yellows, the transient non-community systems. So you'll be able to see that, and you can click on it. And this is the transient non-community system in Raynham Athletic Club, the RAC. And
what does transient mean? They don't use it all the time?
Yeah, so as you move it, so the community systems are the ones that, me being not a drinking water person, I think of as a public water supply. They're the big systems, the MWRAs, the Lowell water system, all of those. But the drinking water program considers and regulates other systems as public water supplies. The cutoff generally, and I'm speaking as a non-drinking water person, I believe 25, if a system serves 25 people or more, then that's a threshold and becomes a public water supply. And then the transient, non-transient really is the nature of the people. If you have a small water supply that's serving 50 people in a condominium or in an office complex, then the people live there or they work there and they keep coming back. So the same people are drinking the water over and over and over again. So they would be non-transient. A transient would be something like the chain donut shop that has a place in a inside the convenience store at a gas station where they are serving many people, but they're not the same people. Well, in theory,
Right.
they're not the same people every day.
Transient refers to the user,
Correct.
not so much the use of the water supply.
Correct.
Okay, like Needham has their own wells, but it's also supplemented by MWRA sort of as needed. I don't know how you'd classify that, but
Yeah, no, those would be community public, both MWRA and Needham would be community public water supplies. And they're probably, they certainly have wells that are cycled on and off depending upon demand, that sort of thing. But the transient, non-transient are getting down to those, are the non-community wells. And they, as you can imagine, begin looking like private wells, but because of who they serve and kind of whether they're over the threshold, they'll become public water supply wells.
got it. Thank
So
you.
in some of these towns, there's really not much of a difference between, like in Carlisle, I believe we sampled the public library, which would be a transient non-community public water supply, but and we also sampled a home, down the street. The wells probably look very similar, but the home down the street is a private well. The library would be a transient non-community. So, and they were sampled by the two different branches of this Pfast sampling program. So you would find the results on two different tables. So we've got that for the Pfast update. The other thing I was going to show on the update, and I inadvertently closed it. I'm going to look at my history to try to find it. Every single those 4 tabs. There we go. And I'll go back to sharing now. Is the Pfast Interagency Task Force. So they had their first meeting last week, and I mentioned it and showed you how to get there last week. Now they have a page for it. And what you'll see under this Pfast Interagency Task Force page, a list of the members of the task force, interesting reading. And if you know these people, certainly you can contact them and let them know any of your thoughts. The hearings, on this tab, you will see videos of the past hearings, so you can catch up on what you may have missed. So that is a, so here's the description, and then you just hit that button and it would play. And then the documents, they will include the presentations. So this presentation is the one that Commissioner Suberg did last week. There's also the agendas and I think the briefing document. That pretty much lists everybody. I'm not sure if you're seeing that or not. But so this agenda here, are you seeing the agenda? I'm going to switch back. Now you're seeing the agenda?
Yes.
Yep. So this agenda has, among other things, the list of upcoming meeting dates, which are June 15th, and the topics that we covered. And then these should be Tuesdays. You should check that, but whatever the dates are, I think they're intended to be Tuesdays. So it's going through every couple of weeks or once a month through at least the end of September. So I would encourage everybody to kind of follow along with this. If you want to, I mean, this is a legislative initiative, legislative task force. And what they're doing is trying to gather information. So to the extent that you have information or thoughts or concerns, that is what they are there for. So it will be interesting to follow along. I'm going to try to, if I can listen in live, watch them, and if not, then catch it on the recordings that will be available on that website.
Paul, it's Linda. I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Have the municipalities been informed of the existence of this legislative body?
To a great extent, well, it is completely out of our control. I'm assuming they have been, at least because the legislators have been, but I'm not sure what the mechanisms have been for that. I do know I was at a Board of Health meeting in Shutesbury remotely the other day, and I mentioned it to them, to the Board of Health, and it was news to them. So as with anything, if people can help get the word out, particularly for municipalities, I think a lot of municipalities are being affected by PFAS and drinking, both in drinking water supplies, as the water suppliers themselves, and many municipalities also find themselves being kind of through the fire departments or through other facilities, may in fact be responsible for some of the cleanup as well. So municipalities certainly have an interest, and it would be good to get kind of the existence of this committee out and the ability to kind of make their thoughts and concerns known, make that as widespread as possible.
Great, thank you.
Particularly this July 19th, circle that on the calendar, is how local communities responding, how they're responding to PFAS in their water supplies. So I think that would be great if the local communities in fact have a way to have some input into that. But again, it's not it's a legislative task force. So DEP just has one seat on that for the commissioner. So that's what I've got for PFAS. In other exciting news, oh, darn it.
Hi, my name's Elias. I don't know if this is like a good time, but I just have to ask a few questions quickly. I'm doing a project on chemical spills in freshwater. Mm-hmm. And I just have a few questions I wanted to ask quickly, if that's okay.
Sure. Okay, we like questions.
So how often do chemical spills occur in like rivers or lakes?
Into rivers or lakes? Well, we'll open this up to the group, but overall, we get reports of releases of oil and hazardous material to the environment, which is what we regulate. We get about 1,200 notifications every year. Of those, probably 40%, and I'm just making numbers up at the moment, but roughly, are historic releases where people find contamination as they're developing a property, taking samples in anticipation of digging and excavating and needing to get rid of dirt. And maybe 60% are more spills and sudden releases. And this data actually is some of this is on our website. It might be a little bit outdated. And of those, a lot of those are things like roadside spills, a tanker truck turning over, and either the contents of the tank being released. That's less common, and more common is the contents of their fuel tanks, saddle tanks being released and getting into, being spilled on the road. Sometimes those spills on the road get into the storm drains, which lead to surface waters. So probably the most common situation is a roadside spill that then goes through the storm drains into a surface water. And I don't know, anybody want to take a guess on how often that kind of thing happens? Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it were like 50 times a year.
I can tell you from the analysis we did of oil spills that reach surface waters that we had on average, we looked, I think over a 10-year period, and we had on average 60 a year that reach surface waters. So pretty good, Paul.
And so I'm going to share my screen, Elias, and show you where you can at least get some of these numbers. If you go to the Wayside Cleanup homepage, cleanup of sites and spills, there's under Wayside Cleanup Advisory Committee, there are probably many ways of getting this, but scroll down, there's a link by the numbers, statistics on site cleanup. And this needs to be updated because it's only through 2018, even though we have more recent numbers, but it breaks it down among other things on types of notification. And let me see if I can make this bigger. The actual numbers are further down on this page, but the 2-hour notifications, that orange line that you're seeing year by year, are those sudden releases, the spills that come in. And those are running, the 2 hours are a bit more than I said, that's probably like 800 per year of the 2-hour sudden release notifications. And then of those 50, 60 or so, maybe a little bit more, because Liz was talking about oil specifically, and you might get a few more hazardous materials, but 60 per year. Next question.
Okay, I had one last quick one, and that's how often is like whoever's responsible for the spill, how often is that a corporation, and how often, or what kind of penalties are there for those corporations?
Well, I'll open this up for everybody else in a second, but one interesting thing about your question about the penalties is that these kind of spills, it is not illegal or subject to penalties in and of itself to have those spills. I mean, we do not penalize people for, at least at our program, for actually having the spill. The worst thing that can happen is having the spill and not telling us about it. That gets penalties. Spills happen, you find contamination, it happens. The program is set up to identify those releases of oil and hazardous material to the environment and get the responsible parties, the owners, the operators of the property, or the people that cause the spill, and get them to do the assessment needed and the cleanup needed. It's any penalties, I would be careful of using that term. The penalties that come into play are more for not following the rules once the spill has been identified.
What about the Natural Resource Damages Program that assess penalties for damage to the environment?
Again, Elliot, I know that this might be a different perspective, but they're not penalties. Penalties are punitive.
Restorative, they're costs.
They are, but costs are not always penalties.
Okay.
I mean,
I take that back.
Yeah, the NRD program, the Natural Resource Damage Program, what the costs that are associated with that is looking at and assessing a spill and finding out what kind of damage to the environment and natural resources it has caused. And then the law looks to the responsible parties to, I'm going to use the term, reimburse the Commonwealth.
Make the Commonwealth whole.
Yeah, make the Commonwealth whole. Damages were caused And the Commonwealth, not the department, the Commonwealth is interested in restoring those resources, and restoration requires money. And so the NRD program looks to the responsible parties to kind of pay back the damages that they were caused, and that money is then used in restoration projects. So again, and I know it may be a matter of perspective, but we would view penalties as being a punitive aspect. What the Wayside Cleanup Program and the Natural Resources Damages Program, really, our main focus is identifying the releases and spills and kind of get people following the process, which does cost money. And some people may view that as punitive, but we all have to react to those spills.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good to have you. Are you a student doing a paper?
Yeah, I am.
Oh, good. Well, this is all, we could go on, all of these people could go on for hours on this. But one of the other things I wanted to bring up, and I should have gotten this earlier because Gerard has left, is that that is the last time that you will see Gerard as the Deputy Regional Director for Wayside Cleanup in the Southeast region. As of Monday, Gerard will be the Deputy Regional Director, Acting Deputy Regional Director for the Bureau of Water Resources in the Southeast region. And that is a direct result of Dennis Johnston retiring on Friday, tomorrow. So it's a good opportunity for Gerard kind of to get involved in a different suite of issues and programs, something he's really well qualified for. And he has, certainly the confidence of the regional director, Millie Garcia Serrano, to do that work and to step in. What is, particularly with all the work on PFAS that's going on in contaminated public water supplies, Gerard can step in and really continue the work on that bureau seamlessly. With Gerard's departure, John Handrahan will be acting Deputy Regional Director for the Wayside Cleanup Program. And John has been working with us in enforcement in a variety of different aspects as a section chief for many years. So again, there shouldn't be that much of a transition. Working with John, it will certainly be a pleasure for us. And the other thing is that Gerard, of course, isn't going very far. I suspect he's not even changing offices. Yeah. So we will still have his input if needed on things. And he's committed to carrying a few of the projects that he's been deeply involved in on for a while as well.
So we shouldn't take his abandonment personally, then you're saying?
No, he assures us that we shouldn't take it personally.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah. And then the other thing I have on my list is we have an advisory committee meeting coming up in 2 weeks. For those of you here and watching, when this video gets posted, we are going to be trying using the new Zoom webinar license that we have. So we will be sending out different login and putting up on the website different login information for that. So look for that. It won't be just this login. That will be coming. We're kind of developing the agenda for that. And one of the things we'll throw out there, if there are topics that you would like to hear about, or perhaps more importantly, if there are things that you would like to tell the department, that you would like to tell us, that we are looking to have space on the agenda. If somebody wants to kind of talk about, bring up, raise an issue and ask questions. Again, we're not promising to answer anything, But raising an issue to the department that you think we should be spending more time on, that we should be thinking about, we should be reacting to, then we want to kind of have that as an opportunity in the advice. We want your advice and want to carve out some time for you to actually give it and not just following our agenda. So think about that as well. Liz would be the contact person for that, but send in anything. And that's all I have. Liz, do you have anything you want to kind of bring up we haven't talked about?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, open it up to anybody else?
Still on track for MCP revisions?
Yes, we have. Yes, I mean we have.
Without asking for a specific date or time.
Yeah, no,
So,
we are following kind of what we laid out before, that we have meetings scheduled to tidy it up and finish up the final review, get it down to final wayside cleanup review, and getting it to into the process, kicking it into the process of review that starts on our third floor and our second floor, and then goes up to EEA, et cetera. So, and we talked about that it is, there's a review and approval process, as there should be. And, we don't have much control over it once we kick it out of our door and into that pipeline. But it is on track, kind of following the general schedule that we had talked about before, which is that review and approval hopefully will go on through the summer. We'd get something out in the early fall, and with an implementation date of late fall, by around the end of the year, with training in the fall. So I think that's still what we're hoping for.
is the training under development, or you do that later?
Well, yeah, we have to figure out what the final, we have to finalize before we can start the so I think the training development will probably be in the summer, because we would likely be making some presentations to the people that are reviewing and approving us. Those presentations and those briefing materials would be the backbone, and in fact are already the backbone of what the training would be. It identifies significant topics, goes into the issues of what the problem was and what changes were made to address it.
Okay.
And I assume
Exciting.
it would be at least a 4-hour training, all DEP credits, if not longer.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
What on the training, as we're starting to think about this, do people have any preferences about, because I think the topics could be delivered as one long 4-hour training or made into modules? Is there any sense of what works best?
May I chime in? So if it's in person, I think 4 hours is great, because people have traveled and they're gonna kind of invest a good chunk of a day. And I thought the program yesterday was great, but after 4 hours of Zoom time, I was done. Like, I couldn't stare at my computer any longer. So if it's going to be primarily virtual, I think 2-hour modules are great, and people can kind of like invest and participate. This is based on my experience, but like, I train other folks on other stuff. I think 2 hours is a good duration for online. But if it's going to be in person, people can stretch it out.
I would agree with that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yep, I agree too.
Yeah, Paul, would it be possible that, you could have like an in-person training before or then modules on
Matt, we're not hearing you.
Yeah, Matt, you're turning into a piano. bad thing.
Can I interpret what he just said, which was in person 4 hours, but then if it gets broken up afterwards into online modules, make them shorter. I think that's what he meant.
Yeah, that's a possibility. I mean, we are going to have to see where we are in terms of in-person meetings. You know, what our bosses kind of want us to do at that point, and what the LSPA is kind of willing and able to do, and what people feel comfortable doing. Yeah, I do like the ease of the virtual training, and I agree 2 hours would probably be a good limit for that. And if we have, like, say, let's hypothetically say 6 hours worth of this training, or 4 hours, you know, whether we do it all at once or in chunks, it really doesn't matter for the development. And, you know, it's easy enough to do 2 hours this week, 2 hours next week, 2 hours a week after that. And then the LSPA can play with it as they will for getting it onto a kind of streaming format.
The UMass conference is going to be virtual again this year. So I don't know if you can incorporate sessions into that, because that's October. The timing probably would work.
Yeah.
And if I could share, I'm not a current committee chair on the LSPA, but the plan is in the fall to do every other meeting in person. So kind of like when they do their monthly meetings, it'll be 1 month virtual, 1 month in person is the current strategy. And I know EBC, same thing. They're trying to do periodic in person starting after maybe October 1.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and I think part of it will be talking with the LSPA about kind of what the best way of doing it would be. And I don't know, I think what we did yesterday with, you know, when it's all online, that is a lot easier to convert to a streaming version, but the kind of the in-person view of it, I'm not sure what works best. So we'll see, but there will be some training to go along with the new regs.
Yeah, I think, you know, even if it is in person, the goal is to, you know, have people be able to attend, have it be hybrid, have people be able to attend both ways. So, and, you know, I mean, we've been filming LSPA meetings, just or whatever, videoing, like you've been doing Wayside Cleanup for over 2 years now, Bill Mitchell.
Yeah, so we have so I'm in the process now of working on a advisory committee kind of scheduling a meeting as the technical person, not as the assistant commissioner, and they are interested in having a hybrid meeting, and those are so much harder than either a fully in-person or a fully remote. And the equipment necessary to make sure that everybody can hear and see everybody else is really tough. So we're still trying to work that out, and that's going to be kind of, that goes back to my comment about getting new toys. As far as this remote thing, it's the realization that if you want to have these hybrid meetings and give the people at home or the remote folks, kind of put them on an equal footing with the people that are sitting in the audience, then you have to have the equipment that makes that available. And having tried that with the advisory committee, you know, before all of this, where we live streamed it on YouTube and then took questions, you know, from the YouTube chat and relayed it, you know, that doesn't quite make it for putting people on an equal footing. It was better than what we were doing before, and it gave us a lot of experience. But I think we have to do somewhat better than that, and including like having big screen TVs so that, you know, people in the audience, you know, when they ask questions, you know, they can, you know, we can see them, and they have that kind of interaction. So we'll see. We're still trying to figure this out, and luckily there are smarter people out there, you know, doing this full time that have the experience, and all we have to do is find the right people to copy. And then convince people to give us the toys to play with, the equipment. which is a lot easier now because they see the value of it. So with that, we're coming up to the end of the hour. Any last words for the last weekly Wayside Cleanup office hours?
Hey, thank you, Paul. Just a thank you for doing
Yeah,
the
Thank
Yeah.
you.
big thank you. This has been wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you, very much appreciated.
Any good summer plans?
Yes, but I'm not going to divulge them.
This meeting is being
heading up to
recorded.
Portland. Want to be there for the drought and the forest fires this year. So
It's hurricane season, so that's my summer vacation plan. I plan on there being a hurricane and being deployed. That's my plan.
You know how to have fun, Matt.
Yeah, really.
We're going to Maine.
It's different.
We're going to Maine for 2 weeks, and I'm going to try to have the first monthly office hours remote from Maine. So we'll see how that goes.
Do they have internet up there?
That's what we have to check. But I'm hopefully if nothing else, I'll have my Wi-Fi hotspot back.
There you go.
Has been currently out on loan for the last year. So we'll see. Again, toys. I need new toys. Okay, with that, have a good rest of the day. Talk to you, see you at the advisory committee.
yeah,
Take care.
Thank you all.
so long, everyone.
See you in a couple of weeks.
Okay.